Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Georg Hoffmann. This is a new tier 10 German destroyer that's available for steel. This new steel event has quite a few ships available. Also 36,000 steel. Very, very expensive for this ship. Both the Prince and the Hoffmann here will not be available later. So I guess this is the time to get it. Not a huge fan of these FOMO events. But when it comes to Hoffmann, looks a lot like the Schultz, doesn't it, on the Elbing line. This is a tier 10 version though. So you can think of this as kind of an up-tiered Schultz with some bonuses that Elbing gets. Also, look at those consumables. Yes, we finally get the Hydro. That's a big benefit on this ship. So if you're looking to get this thing, think of it as more of a close-range version of these ships, as it does lack some range on both its main guns and its torpedoes. It's fine. It's fine. It's just very expensive. Much like the Prince the other day, this ship is a very similar playstyle to a tech tree ship. And 36,000 steel is a lot. So I'm not sure about anybody really feeling like they should need to get this or rush out to get this. If you have a lot of steel just laying around, you've played a lot of clan battles, sure, just go for it. But for those of you that have been saving for a long time, I'm not even sure this ship will give you much more or is even better than Elbing, for example. Elbing is quite a fun ship these days. I've been converted thanks to that lovely legendary upgrade that Elbing has. Makes it a lot of fun to play. So let's talk more about what Hoffmann does. It has some pretty solid AP, certainly has the nice Elbing shells, but does not have the improved pen angles. You'll notice we also have the same fuse times on that AP, which means we were over penning that Kaba. And that's a little disappointing because Elbing AP absolutely slaps. The alpha damage here on the AP is the exact same, so we get that nice 4,100 alpha damage. So into a Napoli here, the broadside, it's going to do some immense damage. Same pen as well. It's just those ricochet angles that have been changed. It's standard ricochet angles from 45 to 60 degrees. Elbing 60 to 68 degrees. So very nice on the Elbing. What does this ship get in return other than the consumable being Hydro? This ship gets better HE shells. So you actually have a little bit better alpha damage on the HE. 2,200 alpha damage versus the 1,800 we see on Elbing or Schultz. Schultz, by the way, also gets those improved pen angles that the Elbing line gets, although it has lower AP alpha. So it's a weird combination, I suppose. We still retain that nice 38 millimeters of pen on this HE, so we're going to get a lot of full pens into cruisers and battleships. You really have to have quite a bit of armor to be shattering these HE shells. And thanks to that higher alpha damage, you have a little bit better HE DPM. It's not insane for tier 10 by any means. Certainly this line was very focused on its armor piercing. And this ship a little bit de-emphasizes that in favor of slightly better HE, but really it's not worth quite as much in my opinion. This line really loves those AP shells. It really, really loves finding those broadside cruisers. Certainly Hoffmann can do some excellent things to broadside ships, but it's those pen angles that really limit the amount of time you have on target when they're broadside with this one versus something like an Elbing or even the Schultz, for example. Let's talk more about the general characteristics of this ship, though. The hull definitely looks like a Schultz hull, and it's very similar. You get the same detection as Schultz, you get the same HP as Schultz, which means quite a bit lower HP, 24,500 base versus Elbing's 30,900 base. But you do get like 0.15-ish kilometers better detection base, so slightly better there than Elbing, but it's not really all that impactful. This Hydro really helps you much more at close range than the slight concealment buff does, in my opinion. It's a little faster too, 37.5 knots base versus the 36.5 knots on Schultz, 36.2 knots on Elbing. And your turning radius is the same as Schultz. So a little bit better, 800 meters versus not 890 on the Elbing. Your rudder shift is the same as Schultz as well at 5.3 seconds versus the 6.3 seconds on Elbing. So a little more maneuverable, a little quicker. It's nice, but not super significant in my opinion. Now, as we're landing some torpedoes here, or a torpedo on this Kremlin, we should talk about those as well, as that is also a difference relative to the Elbing and the Schultz. It's just different than the line. You have lower alpha damage, 14,400 alpha on these torpedoes, versus the 16,500 you would find on Elbing and Schultz. But you have a lot better speed on these torpedoes, which makes them much more usable in my opinion. So you have 66 knots base speed on these torpedoes versus the 50 knots on Elbing and Schultz. They're more of zoning torps on those two, whereas this ship can actually use them to hit targets a little easier. It's a nice improvement, I will say, but you're still mainly a gunboat. For the most part, you're a gunboat. I wouldn't really rely on these torps too much to really carry you through your damage. The reload is a little bit better at 80 seconds versus 90 seconds, so you get them back a little bit quicker, although your DPM is basically the same as Elbing for torpedoes. It's really going to be that speed that helps you land them a little bit more often and more consistently. 12 kilometers of range instead of 13.5 kilometers of range on the torps. It's more focused on close range combat, I will say. The guns, though, is the big problem when it comes to range and close quarters combat. Yes, you get the hydro that allows you to play a little closer without eating random torpedoes, anything like that. You can even do the smoke hydro gimmick. It's a full 6-kilometer German hydro. It's possible, but the problem is going to be the gun range, I gotta say. Not only do we have those shell issues with the AP pen angles, but your range is down to 11.2 kilometers base. That's nearly gearing levels, which is not good, by the way. The Elbing gets 13.3 kilometers base, and you often will be buffing that with the commander skill up closer to, what, 15 or so? And this ship, I am running that commander buffed range. I didn't go double range mod, although I kind of should maybe try that, I suppose, but then we're giving up so much DPM by not taking reload mod. So Elbing ends up feeling a lot more comfortable to play at those medium and longer ranges. It also helps that Elbing has much more reasonable firing angles, I will say, especially when kiting. The Elbing gets 33 degrees forward firing angles to shoot all of its guns, 34 degrees backwards. Relatively consistent for no matter which way you're facing. Hoffmann, on the other hand, 30 degrees firing forwards to get all of your guns. You actually get out to 20 degrees to fire 2 of your turrets, which is really, really comfy. But then when you're kiting, which you often are in these ships, it's 42 degrees to fire all of your guns. And to get 2 of your guns, you still have to give like 36, 37 degrees of broadside. That's a lot. And often when you're playing these ships, you're not pushing people. You're using the concealment, which is very good on both of these ships for the size of the ship, to get a little bit closer to someone, and then you surprise them on their broadside, for example, with this excellent AP, and you're already pre-turning away and starting to kite away from them. And then you go dark and you push back in and you do it again. You're kind of that ambush predator. So I think it's more important for these ships to have better kiting angles than pushing angles. And the kiting angles on Hoffmann are much worse than the pushing angles are compared to Elbing, let alone the more consistency and the more valuable those kiting angles are, at least in my opinion. The torpedo angles are terrible on both, I'm going to be honest with you. You got to go like 50 degrees of broadside either way on both ships, so you do need to be dark or relatively safe when you're dealing with these torpedoes. Now, we do got to mention some of the positives too, okay? The hydro is legitimately amazing. I really, really like having these hydros on this ship. Something that happens when you're playing an Elbing or any of the standard line, you're just going to eat random torps. It's kind of just a fact of life when playing those ships. No matter how good you are, at least I think so, no matter how good you are, you're just going to have those random torps happen upon you, and you're just going to eat a torp every once in a while. Might not be very often, but it happens, and it's a little bit annoying, certainly. This, having a hydro, is excellent, which allows us to push this Shima and still keep them spotted. We're being lit, of course, by the battleships that will be shooting at us. Yeah, we're going to take some damage here, but hopefully we can finish off this Shima. This hydro is very nice. You do have to keep in mind, though, you're still a large target. You still retain that nice 25mm belt armor, so shattering some of these HE shells is very good. but you're still a big target. So even though you have some of the tools, like this Hydro allowing you to play a little closer, yeah, you can still take some pretty big hits. It's not wanting to play that close all the time, especially with that lower HP pool compared to Elbing. Now, I was playing with Malta a lot, and definitely go follow Malta. Links in the description down below. Twitch and YouTube. Great content creator for this game. Yeah, he's just going to pop off for like a triple kill to bring this game back for us. Let me give you his perspective real quick.
Oh! La Pampas 3. Got him. Blind shot. Okay. I'm insane at WoWs.
You're the
I'm
best.
insane at WoWs.
Holy, you're crazy.
Hey, actually that's a pretty decent trade, dude.
Absolutely crazy play from Malta to, yeah, bring us back into contention in this game. You notice that I really didn't do a whole lot in the start of this match. There wasn't a lot for me to do. There was a lot of airstrikes going around and people playing pretty far back. That is a weakness, of course, with Hoffmann. Lower range and large ship can take some damage when you're trying to push up. We also should mention, actually, the smokes are slightly different here. It's not the exact same smoke. Your dispersion time, or how long the smoke lasts, is 77 seconds instead of the 97 seconds we see on Elbing. So yes, you do have the smoke hydro gimmick, but your smokes aren't quite as good, so they nerfed those down a little bit. The damage control and the defensive fire are both the same, but the engine boost is actually a little bit better. It lasts 180 seconds versus the 120 seconds we see on Elbing and Schultz. So all of this pointing, of course, to the ship wanting to play a little bit closer range, forcing you to play a little closer range thanks to its lack of gun range as well as torpedo range. But we're getting some hits, certainly, and the torpedo's speed helps to make up for that. I suppose the Hydro makes up for the reduced gun range is the theory, allowing you to play a little closer without worry as much of eating those torpedoes. Engine boost lasting a little longer allows you to dodge incoming fire like that a little bit easier for a longer period of time. It just feels like a little bit too much reduction on the range of these guns, and a little disappointing that your AP doesn't retain those improved pan angles. Even a little bit of improved pan angles, like the Petro angles, for example, would have been nice to see, but just going back to standard, it makes you much more reliant on this HE. Maybe I would have liked to see you have some of those pan angles still on the AP, but keep the HE lower, perhaps? Retain some of the unique factor of this line. That might have been a cool way to do it, but the extra HE alpha damage does help. Managed to burn down the Mecklenburg. Here we're seeing the absolute power of having 3 destroyers alive versus 3 cruisers, battleships, or I guess there was 4 there. Very close match. We had more cap control early, so it gave us the option to at least be in this game, even though they have 3 caps now. You'll notice that score timer in the top next to the caps, that we see which one is bold. So the bolded one is the team that's going to win the game. It gives you a timer on how soon that team, if nothing changes, will get to 1,000 points. But there's only 2.5 minutes left in this game. So the one that's bolded is the one that will win at the end of the battle timer as well. So in this case, it swaps over to us when we kill the Guden. That is very, very, very valuable information. Mods are incredibly powerful. Some of these mods are so good that I think Wargaming should just implement them as in-game options for everyone, so you don't have to go to third-party sites to get them. This score timer is insanely valuable, letting me know we still win, even when the GK touches the cap. 50 seconds, 45 seconds left, he touches the cap. We know, based on this score timer, that they won't even catch up on points. That's invaluable information. That's crazy powerful. It dictates what you can and can't or should not do in these later game scenarios. It's extremely powerful. So it'd be nice to get some of these implemented. I know it's a lot of development time and all that, especially when the community does develop some of these mods, but some of them are just so powerful, you know? And in this case, the GK unfortunately gets squished between Hoffmann Torps and, well, Shima Torps are a little bit more powerful, let's be honest. Got up to 103 in this one. Ignore the 2.3 million potential damage. Majority of that was the out-in airstrikes. The airstrikes this game, they tend to rack up potential damage rather quickly, don't they? We managed to clutch it out, managed to win, but let's be honest, that was all thanks to Malta and his triple kill there. Absolutely ridiculous to save that game. Definitely go give him a follow on Twitch as well as YouTube. Makes great content for World of Warships and is a great player too. So that'll be linked in the description down below. On to our last game I have to show for you here, and this is almost a suicide push in an Elbing, right? Like, most of my team is directly behind me in the path that torpedoes, longer range torpedoes, would be coming through, right? But I have a Hydro allowing me to play here. And sure, it's risky still, but we spot the Shima at our 6-kilometer Hydro detection range rather than the Shimakaze's usual 5.6-kilometer detection. Very useful as well. So it allows the ship to play a little more aggressive for cap control. If you're someone who didn't enjoy Elbing or the line because it didn't allow you to contest caps when you're the solo destroyer on a flank, Hoffmann is a little bit interesting then for that. I do think. I think that's a very interesting way to look at Hoffmann. It's a destroyer that has the ability to actually contest these caps without just eating a bunch of torpedoes, RPF torps, getting outspotted by gunboats that are quite scary still. Certainly the 25 mil plating can help, but if the DDs know to switch to the AP, they can melt you pretty quick. You don't have the HP of Elbing either in this case, and you don't have those improved pen aims. Z42 here, broadside on, and we're going to overpen him. So you don't have that massive AP alpha into destroyers. Elbing has this weakness as well. So maybe Hoffmann's a little better because you can swap to the HE when people are flat broadside and do a little bit better. Although there when he angled, we did manage to get a pen and you saw the damage massively increase. The thing about Elbing is it lets you still retain that massive AP alpha while the destroyer is trying to angle to you, and then you can get those full pens a little bit more easily. Hoffmann really can't do that. And I suppose the last thing we should mention is alongside the Prince the other day, talking about Prince versus the Guden, it's gotta be the legendary upgrades, right? So the tech tree ship is arguably just a better version of these two steel ships. The steel ships are already very expensive, but let's throw out the cost and just talk about the ships versus one another. I think it's very easy to argue. In fact, I would probably say that if you're looking for the gimmicks of these two ships, the airstrikes on the Dutch line and the monstrous AP and ambush potential of this German destroyer line, the tech tree ones are just better. These are kind of side grades that do some things differently, some things a little better, other things a little bit worse. And the gimmick of the line is a little bit worse on these, in my opinion, let alone getting yourself the legendary upgrades, which of course for the Guden and the Dutch line gives you monstrous, absolutely crazy airstrike firepower. A little too much in my opinion. And for the Elbing, its legendary upgrade actually entirely changed my mind about the ship. I personally did not enjoy Elbing at all. I thought it was too large, it was too clumsy. It was a ship that I often found myself alone on a flank, and I just could not contest the caps. It was too big, too bulky. It could not push other destroyers. It took too much damage. And with its legendary upgrade, I found myself enjoying the ship again because it could react to what was coming towards it a little bit easier, just a little bit easier. It goes in the 6th upgrade slot, so you're trading reload, of course, for it. But while your engine boost is up, for Elbing, you get 12% more speed. So in those situations where you do need to be closer range fighting, you're just more maneuverable, you're faster, you're harder to hit. Very, very nice. You also still get 6% reload, so you're only missing 6%. Usually the reload upgrade gives you 12%, I believe. Also penalizes your turret traverse, is what the reload mod does, the standard one. This legendary upgrade does not have that. In fact, it buffs your turret traverse by 100%. It makes Elbing turrets absolutely fly around the ship. So not only does it have better firing angles, in my opinion, I value those kiting angles a little more than the slightly better, or quite a bit better if you're only using 2 turrets forwards. Elbing, of course, has 2 turrets in the rear that can always fire. Very, very handy. And that turret traverse on the Elbing with that legendary upgrade makes the ship incredibly comfortable to play at closer range. It allows you to react to ships that just happen to pop up that are close to you, those destroyers. Hoffmann gets the Hydro to deal with that. Elbing has that legendary upgrade to give you the turret traverse to deal with that. It's still not as good as Hoffmann at closer ranges. You're still going to eat torpedoes. The Hydro is legitimately useful. The extended duration on this engine boost is legitimately useful. The torpedoes, having better characteristics, in my opinion. I think the improved speed outweighs the slight damage buffs that the Elbing gets over the Hoffmann. I prefer the speed much more so, allowing me to hit those torps a little more consistency. Even though we do lack the torpedo range as well, Elbing is still just a better version of this ship, in my opinion, let alone the HP pool differences. So we do have to bring value into it as well. This is just talking about the ships versus each other. 36,000 steel is so much for these ships. It is much more than you would typically see for tier 10 steel ships. When it comes to cruisers, of course, for Prince, the Commissar 30k steel, Plymouth 27k steel only, Svea 30k steel, Austin 29, Stalin 28. It's a lot more for Prince, but it's even worse when we're talking about the destroyers. Typically, the DDs are even cheaper yet. Z42, which, you know, is not the same kind of ship as this, but it's an alternate version of Z52, I suppose. It's a different line. This is kind of the alternate for Elbing, I suppose, for steel. That one's 27,000 steel. Nearly 10,000 steel more for Hoffmann. And that's a lot, man. That's a lot of steel, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a ton of steel laying around. For those of you that do, I mean, you don't need me to tell you if the ship is worth getting or not. You probably have enough steel to just buy it regardless. This is for the people that have been saving for a long time. I don't think it's necessarily worth that much steel. I know it's not going to be available for very long at all. It's a little more limited, but it's just a bit of a side grade. And in the gimmick of the line, the special feature of the line, it's just a little bit worse. Notice we took a massive hit there from that Yamato. The crossfire of those torpedoes, well, the Hydro let me know they were there, so I could dodge them. The torps did force me flat broadside to that Yamato. You do need to be dodging incoming salvos. Even AP from battleships, sure, it's not going to get the full pen damage, but a bunch of overpens still hurts a ton. Especially with this HP pool being a little bit lower. So a little bit lower damage game, certainly. Thank you to Malta for carrying me. Certainly a bit of a theme in these games. So you'll have to let us know what you think in the comments down below, especially if you do end up getting this ship. Let people know what you think. For me, though, it does seem like a bit of a pass on my end. I would not be getting this one. Certainly, I would be more interested in the Prince as well. Sure, it's a bit of a side grade again, and a little bit worse in the airstrike department, but Prince has excellent guns. They're very, very nice to use. Hoffmann, though, that gimmick of Elbing with that insane AP, the ambush potential, especially now that I've got the legendary upgrade. I know, legendary upgrade, another thing that takes a while to grind for, certainly. But so is steel. So I think it's fair to bring that into the discussion. If you have enough steel for Hoffmann, you probably should have enough research points, or at least the ability to go grind for that legendary upgrade. Maybe that's a little out of touch. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. But this is the build that I was using here. We went mostly on those main guns, also with the range upgrades. I did not try a torpedo build. I really would like to maybe try something with double range. I haven't managed to do that yet, but you give up so much reload then. Suddenly you're over 7-second reload. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should be using the smoke more to push up more. Closer range, get into those gunboat fights with our Hydro advantage as well. It does work. The Hydro is powerful. It does let you push and contest caps a little bit easier, much easier in fact, than the Elbing, but I think there's better ships for that role, especially with the size of this thing. Sure, you've got a Hydro. You know when the torps are coming. You know where they're coming from. When the Hydro's up. Whether or not you can dodge them it isn't always clear, I guess we'll say. So the upgrades looked a little something like this as well. Propulsion mod, very, very useful, especially when your engine boost is on cooldown. 6-kilometer Hydro is nice, but it's so expensive, man, for kind of a side grade Elbing-ish, maybe a worse Elbing, I suppose, in a lot of aspects. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.